Let's get into the conference tournaments. Let's kick things off. Mike, I'll go to you with the Colonial. Start the Colonial. This will start tomorrow, Friday. Time you're listening to this might be today. In Washington, D.C. This used to be in South Charleston, where Charleston would have an advantage, semi-home court advantage there. But now it's in D.C., which I think is a fair venue for if you look just geographically. Charleston is the favorite, minus 110. Hofstra, the second favorite. They're the top two seeds, plus 175. Then you have Towson at plus 650. UNC Wilmington at 15-1. And then you're kind of getting down into some longer shots. Charleston is everyone's darling that they think is going to come out of this bracket. And I should mention, actually, that Hofstra, Charleston, Towson, and UNCW, the two teams that I mentioned, they have, I guess, double buys into the quarters on Sunday because there is a first-round game between Hampton and Monmouth. What a game that should be. And then you have a bunch of teams playing the second round. Semifinals on Monday, championship on Tuesday, which means Hampton or Monmouth, you want to get in, you got to win 5 games in 5 days. And then the teams playing in the second round have to win 4 games in 4 days, which is certainly no easy task. So there's a major advantage for the top 4 seeds. Lay it out for us. What are you seeing here? How do you think this plays out? Do you see any futures value on the board in the CAA, where Hofstra is actually the 1 seed?
So what's interesting, I like the way that this conference breaks down. I love a mid-major conference that there's a huge differential between the top and the bottom. The 7 through 13 seeds in this tournament, Northeastern, 310th in KenPom, North Carolina A&T, 314, William & Mary, 323. It just gets worse as you head back. Elon, Stony Brook, Hampton, Monmouth, all in that 330 to 355 in KenPom range. These teams are not winning 5 games in 5 days or 4 games. In 4
Zero
days.
chance.
Zero chance. So let's talk about who actually has a chance to do this. You teed it up with Charleston. The Cougars are currently a 12-seeded bracket matrix, but they got to win, I would imagine, to get a bid. I don't think they really have that strong of an at-large resume. They bomb away from 3. They take 33s per game. That's the second most in college basketball. They make 10+, but they only shoot 34% from long range, so it makes them a high-variance candidate, which I like at the top of this because they're not my pick to win this tournament. They're 176 in three-point accuracy. But they're also the best offensive rebounding mid-major. They're 12 offensive rips per game. That's third nationally. And all 5 starters average double digits. Even their 6-man, Ben Burnham, is averaging 9.6 per game. They've all played. Those 6 guys have played every game this year. So they have a lot of continuity. They have great balance. So I have respect for them. But when I look at who they have to beat to get this championship in this conference tournament, I don't think it's such a great matchup, particularly against Hofstra. Dalton Bolton played one of his worst games of the year in a loss at home against Hofstra about a month ago. That was a 4-point loss. So I think they're vulnerable. So what does that open up from a value perspective? Let's start with Hofstra. They've won 11 straight. They're plus 180, 2-1 to win this tournament. Against the top 4 seeds, they smoked Wilmington by 24. They split with Towson, and they upset Charleston on the road. So at least we have that actual data point of how do they look matching up against these top teams. And then from a personnel standpoint, electric backcourt. Tyler Thompson and Estrada are fantastic. They're both 6'3". Estrada can do it all. He's averaging 25 and 4. As a team, they're shooting 47.8% from the floor, which is 20th nationally. And they have one of the best defenses in the CAA. I think they offer the best balance offense to defense in this tournament. The issue, naturally, is they're pretty small, which makes them a bad rebounding team. They're in the 300s in a lot of meaningful rebounding metrics, both on the offensive and defensive glass. They play 4 guards a lot, and both forwards are a little undersized. So that is naturally concerning to me. But Tyler Thomas has really taken that step up to meet Estrada, who was the preseason CAA Player of the Year. And the fact is they can go together and score 60 points at the drop of a hat in a single game. So I like the Flying Dutchman here. The Pride are one of the plays I'm going to put here in the tournament. But then we get into my favorite play, which is Towson. 6-1. And when you look at their resume against the top teams, they took Charleston to OT at home, lost by 2. They split with Hofstra. They beat UNC Wilmington in the regular season finale. And then from a personnel standpoint, Nick Timberlake has made that jump to mid-major star down the stretch. He scored 24+ in 6 of their last 11 games. 5 of those games, he made 5 threes or more. So he's the straw that stirs the drink for the Tigers. And then on the other side, they have Cam Holden, who's the
he had 34 against at Charleston in a game that led by double digits with like 12 to go before Charleston put a big run on them. And they Towson, look, love Pat Scarry, great coach, and they're all seniors. Like they're basically their entire rotation. So it's a very, very experienced team. But go ahead.
Sure. So in addition, it's not just Timberlake. Also, Cam Holden has 5 double-doubles in his last 10 games. He's probably the best rebounding guard in the country. He's a 6'5", power guard. And as a whole, they're one of the best offensive rebounding mid-majors. And that makes it really like advantageous for them to win multiple games in this tournament because they don't need to have that game where they shoot 40+% from 3. They can get on the glass. And even as a team, they're 33rd nationally in 3-point percentage. So I like the chances of them catching fire offensively. They've done it on the road in the last few years. They've been one of the best road teams to bet against the spread. They nearly upset Clemson on the road. So when I look at that, their play away from home, that's a major benefit. Then we go down the board. UNC Wilmington's 10-1. I actually don't like the Seahawks here. They got smoked by Hofstra, smoked by Charleston. They lost to Towson. They play very slow, so that's a little bit different and a bit of a contrast here in this conference tournament. But they can't shoot. They're 225th in shooting efficiency. They're bad on the glass. The only positive thing that I can say for the Seahawks is that they turn you over a lot, but I'm not sure that's enough to make up for some of their other deficiencies. And then finally, it wouldn't be a conference preview without a long shot. I'm going to go with Delaware here, 50-1. Listen, they beat North Carolina, Wilmington, and Towson this year. So when you look at their path, they could beat Northeastern in the first game and then Towson on the way to the semis. I think that's totally reasonable to see that come to fruition because Jameer Nelson Jr. is having a special end to his season. He's up to 25-4 a night. He's absolutely on a tear. He had 39 against UNC Wilmington, 30.7 dimes against North Carolina A&T, and 22-5 at Elon. So I think there's a chance for him to put this entire Blue Hen team on his back. And at 50-1, I think that's a little overinflated. I would probably play it at 40-1. So 50-1 is definitely a play because of the path. I like their matchup against Northeastern, and I think there's a decent shot that they could upset Towson. And then once you're at the semis with the 50-1 ticket, as we said before, it's licensed to print money from a hedge perspective.
Yeah, one thing that I'll disagree with on Delaware. Delaware is the defending champs. For what it's worth, they're the 6th seed. They'll take on Northeastern in the first round. Delaware did win 3 straight to end the year. I mean, they beat Elon, they barely beat North Carolina A&T, and then they beat UNC Wilmington, who I agree. I am not a fan of the Seahawks, which I think bodes well for Hofstra. Drexel, it's good defense, but they got to win 4 games in 4 days, and they're dealing with some injuries as well. So, I think Hofstra probably is the easiest path to the final. I mean, Charleston and Hofstra, they should walk to the semis here, which is their biggest advantage, which is, I agree with you. That's how you want it to be if you're a mid-major. With Delaware, you have Asamoah, who's injured. I don't know his status. He's important. He hasn't played in a while. And kind of off the record, I guess it's not off the record now. I'm about to say it on a podcast that gets listened by a ton of people. But apparently there's locker room issues with Delaware, and things aren't going well. I don't know. That could be anecdotal, but heard it from a couple people close to the program. The one thing I do like about Towson here is that you mentioned, a lot of teams want to run, especially the top teams, but Towson wants to slow this down, dominate the offensive glass as a Pat Scarry team usually does. And these conference tournament team games, a lot of times they might end up being more of a half-court battle, a lot on the line. It's not as up and down. That's how Charleston wants to play. Charleston comes at you with waves. They have a really deep bench, and they just want to run, and they get out, and they just come at you and come at you and come at you. But Towson's super comfortable just in the half court, and they could shoot the 3. A lot of that's Timberlake, and then they can dominate the offensive glass. So even if they have an off shooting night, that's where they can make their hay. So yeah, I think Towson, from my perspective, has the most value in this bracket. If you believe that Delaware is dealing with some issues and they might not be at full strength, don't even bother looking at the super long shots in the bottom of this conference. They have 0 chance. All right, good stuff there in the CAA. So wait, who you calling is going to win it? Who's your call?
I'm going to go with Hofstra. So my 2 plays, I'm going to take Hofstra at +180, and I like Towson's value at 6-1. I think it's going to end up being the Pride, though, winning the automatic bid.
If you haven't watched Aaron Estrada, check him out. He's probably the most electric scorer most have never heard of. I think he's gone for 40 this year. He's capable of going for 30 plus with ease. All right, let's move on. BJ, let's bring you in here and let's talk some Big Sky. This will take place March 4th through the 7th in Boise, Idaho. Montana State is your favorite at plus 115. Eastern Washington, second at plus 250. They had a long winning streak that recently came to an end. They lost to Idaho State. Then they lost to Montana State to close out the season. Montana plus 450, Weber 11-1, Sacramento State 20-1, and then you're getting down into some super long shots. For what it's worth, keep this in mind. I say this every podcast. Make sure you shop around. These odds can differ dramatically, especially when you're looking at the long shots. Difference between a 50-1 and a 70-1. If you get to the final, that's massive. So make sure you shop around and have as many outs as possible. Okay, so the Big Sky is you have all 10 teams make it. Eastern Washington is the 1 seed. They will get a bye into the quarterfinals along with Montana State, Idaho State, Montana State, Weber State, and Sacramento State. The teams playing on the first day, Northern Arizona, Idaho, Portland State, and Northern Colorado. BJ, break this down. What do you see in the Big Sky?
Yeah, to me, Stuck, I think that this is pretty clear in a way that Montana State is the best team in this conference. So I'm going to be taking them. You can find a plus 140 out there. I mean, it's obviously very boring to take the favorite, but Eastern Washington, they obviously had, like you mentioned, they had a 16-game win streak to begin Big Sky play. But if you look per shot quality, they're the second luckiest team in the country. Per Ken Palm, they're the 31st luckiest team in the country. 10 of their 16 wins have come by 10 points or less. So a lot of luck on their late game variance. And they recently, like you mentioned, they just lost to Montana State at home. And, the final score line will say they lost by 5, but Montana State has a 17-point lead with 10 minutes left to go. So it was a pretty clear shellacking from the Bobcats. And the Bobcats, they're the number 1 team in the conference in adjusted defensive efficiency, points per possession allowed in both the half court and transition, 2-point field goal percentage allowed. They turn opponents over at the highest rate. It really is the best defense in this conference. And then on the offensive side of the ball, they are the most efficient team at getting to the rim. They get to the free throw line at the 7th highest rate in the country. And then when they get there, they're shooting 76% in conference play. And I think the bracket sets up really nicely for them because since Montana is going to be the 4 seed, they are going to be on the side of the bracket with Eastern Washington, who is the number 1 seed. And I believe Montana State is the 2nd or 3rd best team in this conference. So instead, they're going to get to play Weber State, who did hand them one of their 3 losses, but it was on the road. And if you look at the shot quality, for that, the game was actually pretty close because Weber State just shot the absolute lights out. But I don't see a scenario where Montana State is going to be an underdog once we get to the final against Eastern Washington or potentially Montana. And I think the bracket sets up easier for them rather than them being the 1 seed. So I like Montana at plus 140. Sacramento State.
Montana State.
Excuse me. Yes, that is a big difference right there. So Montana State at plus 140. Sacramento State at 25-1 is kind of interesting. They're 4th in the conference per shot quality and adjusted efficiency differential. They played a ton of close games throughout conference play. They lost by 2 to Montana on the road. They lost by 4 to Montana State on the road in late February. Lost by 3 to Weber State. Like, this is a very, very interesting team that's had a lot of late game variance go against them. So they're kind of interesting. They're going to play Weber State in that first game. They're only going to be about 2-point underdogs to Weber State. So you could potentially get them in a situation where you can get Montana State or even Sacramento State into the final at a pretty good number. So Montana State at plus 140 and Sacramento State at 25-1 are my 2 plays.
Yeah, Eastern Washington, one thing about them, and look, yeah, I agree that they were lucky. They do run great offense, run a lot of it through the post, but they're a high variance team, which is, if you don't like that for one of the teams that are the top seeds, but they shoot a ton of threes and they give up a ton of threes. So, if the team is missing a lot of threes, then their opponent's missing a ton of threes, no matter who they play in this conference, and they're making them, they're going to win this. But I agree. I think Montana State by far, and they match up pretty well with Eastern Washington because Montana State can get out in transition. Eastern Washington very poor there. Eastern Washington very, very poor, like 9th percentile pick and roll defense. Montana State can take advantage there. Montana State can hold up in the post. And then if you look, Montana State, this is a team that won it last year. If you recall, who do they end up playing? Did they play Tennessee? No, Texas Tech. They played Texas Tech in the tournament. But they won this last year. Extremely experienced team. And Bello, one of their best players, battles amazing, their guard. And Bello's kind of like this, 6'9", crafty big. He hasn't been fully healthy until recently. He was dealing with an arm injury, and he's really come on. But, he kind of, I think it was, about a couple of weeks ago, was really struggling, and it showed on that end. And I think that's weighing down some of their metrics. Still, I have them power rated as clearly the best team here. I think they match up well with Eastern Washington. And I agree. I think this is chalky. I think it's Montana State's tournament, and they're going back to the dance. Very well coached team and experienced, and they'll be a team that's depending on the matchup. So I'm a big fan of Danny Sprinkle too in a tournament setting. Very good coach. Depending on the matchup, they'll be a team that could be dangerous as an upset potential that no one will talk about. They won't be on anyone's radar. They're not like going to be the New Mexico State or the Charleston. They're not the sexy team, but Montana State could be dangerous if they get in. They're kind of coming on at the right time, and they won't beat themselves, but very well coached team. So I agree. I'm going with the chalk there with Montana State. All right, let's move on, Mike, to the SoCon. Let's talk a little Southern Conference. This will be held starting tomorrow, Friday, March 3rd through the 6th in Asheville, North Carolina. Furman is your favorite, like plus 125, plus 130. They are the 1 seed. They'll get the winner of Mercer Citadel. Then they'll get Western Carolina, East Tennessee State. Pretty favorable path to the finals. Furman has had some heartbreaking losses. This core, these fifth-year seniors, Bothwell and Slauson, if you recall, they lost at the buzzer at a three-pointer in overtime last year to Chattanooga. Just a crazy shot from half court, and they didn't get to go again. They haven't been to the tournament since 1980. Is this the year for Furman? In the bottom half of the bracket, Samford is the 2 seed. They were swept by Furman this year. Then they will get the winner of Chattanooga VMI. And then UNCG will take on Wofford in the other game in the bottom half of the bracket. Mike, what do you see here in the SoCon? Does Furman finally go dancing?
I think they do, to be honest with you. I think if you had to put together a mid-major roster from scratch, this is kind of the dream scenario. They have a great guard in Mike Bothwell, I should say, 18, 3 and 3 a game. And then on the low block, Jalen Slauson is a beast. He averages 16, 7 and 3. They also have nice weapons additionally on the perimeter and guards JP Pegas and Marcus Foster, who both shoot better than 35% from 3 and average 11 a game. When you look at how they matched up with the top of the SoCon, they swept Stanford. They split with Greensboro with an overtime loss, and they bullied Chattanooga. So I think they're ready to make this jump. And from a style perspective, they can really score. They're averaging 80 points per game. They're 12th in shooting efficiency, 33rd in Ken Palm's offensive adjusted efficiency ratings, which is one of the highest for mid-majors in the entire country. And what I like is they protect the basketball. They're not awful defensively. They're not even close to being considered a defensive stopper. But I think they have the offense to run by just about everybody here in this tournament. And they were really good on the road. They were 8-3 straight up on the road this year and 7-4 against the spread. So as a number 1 seed in a tournament, I feel pretty safe with the Paladins here. But I'm going to kick the tires on some of these options, down the card. So you have UNC Greensboro. They're plus 250. I was a little bit surprised to see this number. I thought it was going to be swapped with Samford. Samford's at 4-1. I think I would need at least 4 or 5-1 to take the Spartans. But they are the best defensive team in this tournament. Greensboro is 28th in opponent shooting percentage. They want to slow teams down so that, the added defensive stops they get have higher value. They have nice size across their starting lineup. Keandre Kennedy and Keyshawn Langley have to have big tournaments for them to win this. They can't just be decent on the offensive end and elite defensively. They need those guys in their backcourt to really step up. They average 28 points per game as a backcourt, but they're probably going to need to up that into the mid 30s to be able to get by some of these run and gun teams in the SoCon. As I mentioned, Samford is 4-1. I think they're the better value. They can really shoot. They're 19th in shooting efficiency. They make a ton of threes and they get to the line a lot. I like that combination. And they put pressure on you defensively. They're not great in a lot of defensive metrics, but they almost force 14 turnovers per game. So that puts them in a nice position. And the story on their whole season is Quez Glover. He missed about 2 months. When he came back, he was certainly rusty in his first 3 to 4 games. But now they're 6-1 straight up in their last 7 with him back in the lineup. I really like their front court, Logan Dye and Jermaine Marshall. I think they give them some nice balance there. Bubba Parham, who's been playing in college basketball, this isn't a joke, since 2017. He gives them someone who can pop off for 5 to 3 6-pointers that they're not necessarily relying on to be the lead scorer. So he gives them some positive variance to potentially go off. And then when you look at their resume this year, they swept Greensboro. They nearly upset Furman at their place, losing an OT, and they swept.
Should have won that game. Then They blew a big lead, got in massive foul trouble, but then they lost at home to Furman recently.
And then in terms of like the wildest team in this tournament, and I'm going to get into why, is Chattanooga. They're defending champs. UTC is 12-1 to win this tournament. But there's news breaking on Jake Stevens. So
which is huge.
He started to practice again. And the article, I think it's, one of their local papers, it's hysterical. The quotes from him are like, I'm chugging milk and protein shakes and anything I can do to heal this hand up. It's also kind of being the subtext of some of his quotes are, if I can't hurt my hand worse, if I can't damage it and potentially hurt my professional, draft status, why not just go in there, even if I'm a shell of myself? Because he was arguably the best big in mid-major basketball. He averaged 22 and 10 with 2.4 blocks per game. They were a team that could have won the SoCon had he stayed healthy. But in addition to that, not just the Stevens factor, they're the highest variance team in this tournament. They are number 1 in the nation in attempted and made threes per game. They hit 37% as a team. So if they go ahead and make 13 or 14 threes in a game, they can beat anybody in this tournament. And they draw VMI and then Samford. So when you look
at Samford gives up as much threes as anyone, and they shoot a ton of threes as well. Another high variance team.
And you look at their matchup, they lost by 1 at Samford and 5 at home. So they were in it. That last one at home was without Stevens. So I think there's if you want to throw a dart in this tournament and hope maybe Stevens won't be back for the VMI game, but at this point he's questionable for the next round. If he's back, that's as big an impact on a single player basis as anyone in this entire field. Just to run down the rest of them,
VMI for what it's worth is they're down to like 6 or 7 scholarship guys. I think they're starting like five freshmen. Chattanooga does not need Stevens for that game. So they should get the Samford. And that's going to be a super high variance game. And then that's what you want with a long shot. You want the variance. And then you also have the potential of Stevens coming back. And if he's effective, there's a lot of uncertainty there, but that's what you want in a long shot, throwing a dart in a tournament where I'm assuming that they're going to get by VMI, that you have to win, 3 games in 3 days.
The rest of the board, I won't even mention Mercer, VMI, the Citadel. Mercer's 231st in KenPom, VMI's 355, Citadel's 317. Those teams are not winning, more than a game in this tournament. So the rest of them, Wofford at 19-1. I can't get over the defensive metrics. They're awful on, when it comes to slowing anybody down. And they'd likely have to beat the 3 top seeds to win it all. It's not happening. They went 1-5 against those teams, and they open with Greensboro. I think it's far more likely that they lose in their first game. Western Carolina, interesting. I'm kind of into it. They're 9-6 against the spread on the road this year. They beat Furman. They have 3 starters who average 14 plus per game, which is something to hang their hat on. They don't shoot the ball particularly well as a team. They can't grab an offensive board to save their life, and they don't force turnovers. So 20-1 doesn't move the needle for me. But as you pointed out, these smaller tournaments, huge variance in terms of the sports books, what they offer. At 35-1, I'm interested. 30-1 probably the cutoff for me. So make sure you shop around there. And then finally, East Tennessee State at 20-1, another one of those teams where I need slightly better number. They're awful from the line in 3-point range. That's my concern, where it's who are you going to really beat in crunch time if you can't make your foul shots, or how are you going to upset teams without burying threes? They've been super sloppy with the basketball, but they finished strong. I mean, they went 3-2 straight up, and 2 of their losses came by a total of 6 points. Jordan King, their point guard, really got it going in the last 2 weeks. Could he go off and put the team on his back and, upset Furman? It's possible. They stayed within 4 of Furman at their place. So I think crazier things have happened. But like I said, I would need a slightly better number to be interested in the Pirates.
Yeah, good stuff there. I think I'm personally going to roll. Well, I'm rolling with Furman. I said a couple months ago, I think this is Sanford's conference, but look, they're such a high variance team, and this with Chattanooga potentially getting Stevens back, and then you might have to play UNCG, really physical defensive team. Adding Kennedy to the Langley brothers, I've been really impressed with them. And yeah, you mentioned Western Carolina, pair of transfers in their backcourt. They've exceeded my expectations coming into the year with Trey Jackson and Russell Jones. But I think Furman has the easiest path. Look, and I worry a little bit about their legs because they're an offensive team. They don't go too deep. And you mentioned Pegues, their point guard. He's really come on at the end of the year. And that's, I think, taken them to the next level. So I think, and Bob Ritchie, I've been paying close attention to how they're like handling all this mentally. Because this is like when the pressure comes, Furman is like the last 4 years, these guys, like they've been so close and they lose in heartbreak. They used to lose in heartbreaking fashion to Wofford every year. How are they going to handle? I like some of the things that I'm hearing and how they're handling this. And then part of me is, look, Slauson and Bothwell have been there. This is their 5th year that they're playing. They've been close. I think that the plus 130, I'm biting. I'm rolling with Furman here. I think they're finally going to get in for the first time since 1980. Good stuff there, breaking that down. One final conference preview to get to. I'll touch slightly on the Summit too before we get to Friday and Saturday. But let's talk a little Southland, which starts on Sunday, March 5th. This goes from March 5th through the 8th in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Top 8 make it. So sadly, you don't get Lamar or McNeese State. By the way, I think Lamar, if I'm not mistaken, was like one of the worst teams in all of college basketball. Yeah, they beat they beat the top seed, Corpus Christi. They beat Nichols too. But sorry, you're not going to get to see McNeese or Lamar. If you are into conference tournaments that reward the top seeds, you're going to like this one. Mike, I'm sure you like this. Texas A&M Corpus Christi, who won the tournament last year, the defending champs, experienced team. They get a bye to the semifinals on Tuesday, along with Northwestern State. Nichols and Southeastern Louisiana get single byes to the second round on Monday. And then you have Texas A&M Commerce, who's not eligible for the NCAA tournament, playing McNeese State in the first round on Sunday. And then Houston Christian, formerly known as Houston Baptist, will take on New Orleans in the other first round game. As far as odds are concerned, Corpus Christi is the favorite here. BJ, is it chalk?
Well,
it's going to be.
If I can hop in real quick, I'm open to being a sports consultant to make the Southland Conference as much free publicity as they want. McNeese State and Lamar, it's ridiculous that they're not in. It's not like it's a 17-team league or something like that, and logistics are the issue. If you really want to force them out and you're worried about, playing an extra round, why not just do like a 3-point shootout between like the last 4 teams? Like, could you imagine live streaming that in terms like ESPN would eat it up, put it on like 2 p.m. on a Wednesday or something. The casinos would love it. Sportsbooks are going to put odds. Like, just make it fun. Don't end their season. As you pointed out, they, some of those teams beat the top teams in the Southland. Like, they deserve a shot.
I got a better idea, Mike. How about 3-on-3 tournament between those 4 teams? There you go.
Anything fun. I agree with these. Yeah, you could easily have 6 teams in the first. Even you could kill the double buys, but whatever. BJ, is it chalk years? Corpus Christi repeating? Where's the value? What do you see here?
I mean, it's probably their conference to lose, honestly. Like, they are the best team in the conference. They're probably a deserving favorite, but I think Nicholls State has some value. You can find them at plus 750 out there. They're second in shot quality's adjusted defense or efficiency differential. They're the second best defensive team in this conference by adjusted defensive efficiency. They turn opponents over at the highest rate in the Southland. They're the second best team defending at the rim. They're first in 2-point field goal percentage allowed. They're a very, very fast-paced team in transition. They're very efficient there. They're top 50 in points per possession. Nationally, they finished at the rim in the second highest rate in this conference. They hardly turn the ball over. Now, it matters at this. It doesn't really matter. It kind of matters, but it also doesn't matter at this point in the season. But Nicholls State played the hardest non-conference schedule of anybody in college basketball. So this is a very, very well-traveled, battle-tested type team. Now, it didn't show really in conference play. They did finish conference play at 6-3, but in those last 9 games, if you look at shot quality, they should have won every single one of those games, including a game over Corpus Christi. So you're getting one of the hottest teams who's due for some positive regression going into the tournament. They're going to have to play Corpus Christi in semis, which is not great, but at a price of plus 750 for what is arguably the second best team in this conference, I think the value is on Nicholls State.
Yeah, I would also look potentially at Southeastern Louisiana. Look, they wouldn't have to face Corpus Christi, who I agree is the best team, metrically, very experienced team. But you can get, and the really interesting thing is that if you look at this bracket, and Texas A&M Corpus Christi ended up winning against Texas A&M Commerce last night, who dropped to the 5 seed, which means they have to play in the first round. But if they didn't, they would have gotten the 4 seed of Nicholls, and if Nicholls lost yesterday. And Texas A&M Commerce gave Texas A&M Corpus Christi a lot of problems this year. They beat them, and then they lost in overtime last night. And that's because Texas A&M Corpus Christi doesn't have a lot of size. They're a really good team rebounding team, but you can get them in the post. And Texas A&M Commerce I think they shot 82% from 2 in one matchup, 65% in the other. But they're going to have to play 2 games just to win 2 games just to get to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Very tall task. With Southeast Louisiana, I mean, they beat Corpus Christi once, played Northwestern State very close. They can shoot the 3. They don't turn it over. They make the free throws. I think that they're pretty intriguing because I think that they should get to the semis. And I don't know. I would look at 6-1. So I think if either Nicholls or Southeastern Louisiana tickles your fancy, they might be worth taking a shot. But I do agree that Texas A&M Corpus Christi is the class of the conference, but I don't see any value at plus 110. Before we get to Friday and Saturday, we have the Summit League. Mike, you're not going to like the Summit League's bracket because they do not reward the top seeds. We have Oral Roberts. Last year, South Dakota State became the first team to go undefeated in the regular season in Summit League play. Oral Roberts became the second this year, and they capped it off on South Dakota State's floor. They went undefeated. Max Asmus, everyone remembers, but they're clearly the best team. They ran through the entire conference, but this is just an 8-team tournament with no buys. And it's played in South Dakota. You have all the Dakotas, and then Oral Roberts coming up from Tulsa. So they're not doing Oral Roberts any favors here. Oral Roberts is the heavy favorite. I think you can find them minus 180. They were 18-0 in league play. They will get the winner of Denver and North Dakota. That's basically a toss-up. Then play Western Illinois, St. Thomas. Both don't really play defense. Great offenses. They could put up a lot of points. Trenton Massner for Western Illinois is capable of completely going off. You haven't seen him play. He's fun to watch. Can they score enough against Oral? I don't think so. And I don't even know who's going to win that game between Western and St. Thomas. Then in the bottom half, it's all the Dakotas. It's South Dakota State, North Dakota State, and South Dakota. I just can't make a case for anyone beating Oral Roberts. I mean, South Dakota State has one of the best home court advantages in all of college basketball. They were catching 5. I bet them got really lucky that game, or backdoor cover. That was on their home court in a smash spot, and Oral Roberts still took care of business. I'm tempted to lay the 180 here with Oral Roberts. If you can parlay favorites or parlay conference, they might be a good parlay piece. It's hard for me to make a case for anyone other than Oral Roberts. And the good news is if that happens, we get to see Max Asmussen, this amazing offense, which is now up to 23rd nationally in adjusted offensive efficiency. Him and Connor Vanover, the new pick and pop man of that offense. Their defense is even better than that Oral Roberts team that made a run in the NCAA tournament a couple years ago. So I think it's Oral Roberts here. I can't make a case for anybody else. Mike, any thoughts there? Or anything else you want to cap off for these conference tournaments? Any final thoughts?
I like the Tommies, as a total dart. It's not an easy road. They got to take care of Massner in the 4-5 game, and then they would play Oral Roberts in the semis. But they played pretty well against Oral Roberts in their last meeting. I think from a pressure perspective, when you run the table and, if they win this tournament, they're an 11 or a 12 seed in March Madness. So, there's a lot at stake for them where a program like the Tommies, I think they're playing with house money. So, obviously, it depends. Shop around, get the best number. But in terms of throwing a dart, that's the only one that has any interest for me. Rhodey has been one of the best freshmen in the entire country for St. Thomas. He's a really fun watch. He's got a game winner under his belt already this season. So sometimes you're looking for a single player to kind of take over and, create a magical run. I'm going to go with him for St. Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to, in 2 meetings with Oral Roberts, they lost 81-69 on the road, and then they lost 95-88 at home. And, Oral Roberts, their defense has been a lot better. I mean, they are the best offense and the best defense in this conference, but they give up a lot of threes. They take a lot of threes too. So high variance, right? If they're way off shooting, and St. Thomas takes a lot and can make a lot of threes as well. So you get the 3-point variance. They shoot, they're the 16th highest 3-point attempt frequency in the country. So the variance factor could be working in your favor there. So yeah, I don't hate that. I think if you want to take a shot, you're going to have to knock off Oral Roberts at some point, do it in second round. And I think they do actually match up pretty well with Western Illinois, who they just recently beat.